Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Amit here. Now, Palantir has just won a $43 million extension contract from the Space Systems Command's Cross-Mission Ground and Communications Enterprise. That is a huge name. We're going to do a couple things in the video. Number one, we're going to analyze what this means for Palantir. Number two, we're going to analyze why they got this contract. And number three, we're going to analyze why the stock price is not going up on this contract. I think we were trading around 1940 this morning. We got a little bump to like 1988. I bought like $100 worth of it at 1940, I think right before it did the pop. And now we're back down to like 1927. Now, I am not someone who cares that much about the short-term movement of the stock on the day-to-day. I expressed that yesterday in a video that I made about why you need to have a long-term mentality about Palantir. But when it comes to news and how the news affects the stock, I think it's incredibly important to be able to analyze how the news is affecting the stock and why the stock is reacting in a certain way to the news. It's not becoming obsessed with the price action. It's rather understanding how Wall Street, which are ultimately the determiners of the stock, unless we pull some AMC retail gang type of mob for the stock price to go up or down, they're going to be the ones ultimately that have the decision making in terms of how far the stock price can go up because they have enough money to allocate towards it, right? So a couple things first from the press release. This $43 million contract is an additional extension, meaning they already were working with the Space Command system, expanding upon previous awards from April and August. So the total value of this contract is $91.5 million. So basically, this is good for the company because they did such a good job back in April and August that they decided to extend them on this contract for $43 million. Now, what exactly does this do? The Palantir platform known as Warp Core, which is, I believe, a variation of Foundry. Foundry is their data analytics platform that ultimately integrates big data for large corporations, is being utilized to make decisions from large volumes of data in support of these missions. Now, Warp Core is going to leverage Palantir as a configurable enterprise data management and operations software solution to enable the integration and management of data from various data sources and supports application delivery, in-depth analysis, data-driven decision-making, all that good stuff that we've been talking about what Foundry does. Here's a really important quote from Doug Philippine, the global defense leader at Palantir. He says, "The threats to our nation in and through the space domain are very real, as we've seen in recent weeks. We must continue to advance our nation's space domain awareness capabilities. We're very proud to have consistently earned the confidence of this innovative organization to continue our partnership." Now, this is really important to understand. Space and how space interacts with the global economy is very important. The reason for this is because there can be an asteroid tomorrow and everything goes to crap, right? So, like, the way we protect not only the United States, but the entire world from things that happen in space are very important. It's also important to understand from a geopolitical perspective. Lots of different countries are ultimately trying to conquer space, right? So you have Russia, China, the United States. These are the three main hegemonies that exist really throughout the entire world. Now, they are all always kind of pseudo going against each other because the one that conquers space conquers a couple things. Number one, the one that conquers space has access to the most resources. Like if the United States goes to the moon and they find water on the moon, there is a pretty strong chance the United States is going to try to lay ownership over that water. Now, I do believe there are some contracts and some treaties that exist where space objects and things that are found by one country have to be kind of universally shared. I could be wrong on this, but I do believe some of those treaties that do exist back from the 1960s, 1970s that they were agreed upon. But we know how this thing works, right? Like if one country gets a lot of stuff from space, they ultimately have more leverage. Even if they do share it, they have the technological capabilities to be able to say, hey, we were able to do this by ourselves. We didn't need help from any of you guys. So you guys shouldn't mess with us because we probably have a military that is able to have the data analysis from a software AI ML perspective and the hardware, i.e. the companies or the governments that are innovating stuff that are actually able to accentuate their desires to get to space. Now, the United States is probably the leader in this, right? Not only do we have the world's greatest tech companies, but we also have Elon Musk and SpaceX, which are literally launching satellites, every week and giving people access to the internet all across the world. So we have probably the best chance to do this. Palantir is tapping into the cultural phenomenon that exists within the United States wanting to be the first to dominate space and wanting to make sure we are safe from space. So those are sort of the first two reasons. Number one, there's stuff in space that we cannot control, like asteroids, and you need lots of data to be able to understand how to protect the Earth from things that are going on in space. And number two, the countries that can ultimately conquer space first and have the companies that are working with the government integrated to be able to win the space race are going to be the ones that win long term. So in conclusion, Palantir works with the Space Systems Commands located in Los Angeles, ultimately to help them better integrate and understand what they're doing with their data analysis to be able to make effective decisions when it comes to dealing with space. Now, the Space System Commands is the United States Space Force Acquisitions and Development Field, which was first established in 1954, and it's the oldest space organization in the U.S. Armed Forces, which leads me to my analysis about what this does for the stock. There's two reasons I think that the stock didn't really explode on this news. Number one, macro level economic issues, no matter how good the contract is. I mean, it could have been 450 million. I don't think necessarily. Okay, maybe if it was 450 million, that would have helped, but it could have been a large amount. 43 million is a pretty large amount of revenue to gain from one contract, right? This is sort of their idea of their average revenue per client is very high. I think it's at like $8.1 million because the value of the service and the value proposition they're offering to their clients is just so tremendous. Because we're in a macro level economy where the S&P is falling, all stocks are going red, like you're just not going to break out of this, right? Because all hedge funds, all institutions are selling. I did an analysis for why they're selling, for tax harvesting reasons. There's stop losses, there's margin calls, which means people have to sell more of their stock, which means all of these things that are happening from a macro perspective are just not going to pump a lot of money to rally into a stock, even if it gets phenomenal news. That's the first thing. The second thing, and this is sort of the major reason why I think people shouldn't be worried that the stock is not jumping on this news, and shouldn't be like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Like, how much more do they need to do to get a rally? Is that this is a governmental contract. This is the really important thing to understand about the stock. Most of the revenue from the stock, at least for the past 2 decades, was from the government, right? It wasn't in the commercial sector. So a lot of analysts on Wall Street don't like that because they're like, okay, how long can you work with the government? And ultimately, how global of a multi-billion-dollar company do we get to justify you as from a market cap perspective if you are only getting clients from the government, right? Like, when are you going to integrate into the commercial sector? Which is why they've done a keen focus over the past couple months to tell Wall Street, now maybe they're not doing it the best way, but to tell Wall Street, hey, we're working with commercial clients, our commercial business is growing, we're integrating, this stuff takes time, you want to really develop these relationships, and you ultimately want to, have something successful. Because this is a governmental contract, it's really important to understand that I don't think Wall Street is valuing it as much as they should, right? And I understand that. If it was like Amazon gave them a $43 million contract to analyze big sets of data within AWS or something, I think Wall Street would take a different look, not only because you're announcing an Amazon partnership, but because that's a commercial client. Commercial clients lead to more commercial clients because if you do well with one commercial client, you're likely to get another one. You get sticky within their organization, which means it's hard for them to get rid of you because they use your service so much. And ultimately, you set a precedent for the stock that says, hey, we can really expand into global markets that don't need to exist within the niche that we've been confined to for the past 2 decades. Because this is one of those contracts that is not necessarily commercial, I don't think Wall Street is ultimately valuing the stock or valuing this contract as much as they can. Overall, for shareholders, this is a great thing, right? For a company that we're invested in to get another $43 million from a client just because they've done a good job to really do something meaningful like protect space. I mean, this is what it takes to be this is kind of why I really enjoyed investing in the company in the first place. Like, they're a company that is actually doing something meaningful for the world, and the growth potential of the company based upon the contracts they're landing and the value that they're providing to justify those contracts seems inevitably in the next 10 years going to be one of the most important software companies in the world. So those are my thoughts on this press release between Palantir securing an additional $43 million with the contract from Space Systems Command. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment. Let me know what you guys think about the overall contract and what it means for the trajectory of the stock, and if you are bullish on this contract and this news in general. Thank you guys for watching. My name is Amit. This is the Daily Business Show. I'll see you in the next one.